It is time for us to hear from our friend Tom E. Curran. Tom E. Curran is brought to you on WEEI Afternoons by Drains by James, Eastern Mass's leader in residential and commercial drain cleaning and pipelining at drainsbyjames.com. At Drains by James, they give a poop about your pipes. Tom E. Curran, I assume you were down at Gillette Stadium today for the introductory press conferences, a who's who of everybody. What was your takeaway?
Well, that they set culture and leadership as their prime driving forces in acquiring some of these guys, and I thought that the right tackle, Morgan Moses, did a very good job articulating what they had in mind. But really, the big takeaway, not just from those guys, but of the day, is you have that conflict between moving on from a guy like David Andrews, who has brought so much leadership and exhibited so much leadership over the period of time, and meanwhile, you're bringing in guys who are going to be kind of a new wave of leadership. So it was a little incongruous and probably unfortunate for them that the timing was what it was.
So was that a little bit of a reset button in terms of the leadership? Like, we got to get the old leaders out before we can expect new guys to take on big leadership roles?
I had the same question, and I think that they were separate.
Oh.
I think they were separate in that they didn't dislike the leadership style or what David Andrews would have brought to the team.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't dislike the leadership style of Dietrich Wise or Jonathan Jones. I don't think that they would ever want to be seen as besmirching those guys and what they did. It just became a question of what's the fit, what's our vision for this position, what's the productivity on the field, what's the age situation of these individuals balanced against the leadership component. And they had to improve at all those positions. Jonathan Jones, to me, you have Marcus Jones as a slot corner as well. You just brought in another corner, Dietrich Wise. He's been a good player. I would not say he's been far beyond good. Average probably at times as well. Great locker room guy. And David Andrews was only able to play 4 games. He's an older player. Obviously, I think he believes he has plenty left in the tank, and I don't blame him because no one wants to leave on the circumstances that he did. But it's a tough balance, but it comes to visit on every player, right, Ted?
Yeah.
Eventually.
No doubt. It is interesting, though. You mentioned Andrews, 10 years here, Jonathan Jones, 9, Dietrich Wise, 8, and I'll even throw Javon Godchow in there. That's a total of 31 years of service for the Patriots and just those 4 guys. It's hard not to think that maybe those are Belichick guys and that strategically they're kind of moving on from those guys, but we'll set that aside. I guess just, Tom, your thoughts on just Vrabel's presentation? A little different tone from his opening press conference, and then maybe that's expected at this time of year. I don't know. Did you see? He seemed a little edgy, a little punchy. Did you see the same thing, or am I just making stuff up?
No, I don't think. No. He wasn't as comfortable and engaging today, and I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that this was supposed to be, in their minds, I think, a nice unveiling of the free agents and garner some momentum as a photo op and an opportunity for us to, in the media, see this, disseminate it to the fans, and have it be a positive. And I think that the Andrews news, especially when Mike fielded questions on it, you could see him bristling like, it's something we were planning to do today, but it's the nature of things. I don't know how they could have done it differently with David Andrews to avoid it. Maybe when they made their decision as to what their roster was going to look like, they pursued a center. They re-signed the kid Ben Brown. They pursued Dahlman in free agency. So clearly they had already made a decision. So maybe to move on prior to today would have removed the opportunity for us to ask the question. But you have to ask the questions about that. So I do think that Mike was more of a mind like, I didn't want to do this. I want to do that. That would be the only thing, though. And he still has to get used to us, I think. I mean, we're a different market than Tennessee, and we're a different media base than maybe he's accustomed to at Ohio State or at Tennessee in terms of pretty cynical,
You got that.
pretty looking for the problem.
Guilty
as charged, indeed. Tommy, obviously they did very well on the defensive side. Now, you could argue that they've got a good linebacking core again, 2 top-tier corners, and if Christian Barmore is healthy, a revamped and revitalized defensive line. But we look to the other side of the ball, and, well, there's a wide receiver 3-4 and Mac Hollins, and we got a veteran right tackle, and that's about it. So why do you think the Patriots, like, what is the number one reason in your mind the Patriots have had such difficulty attracting offensive talent to date thus far this offseason?
They're setting a very high bar as to who they'll pursue. For instance, there was no offer made for DK Metcalf. I don't even know if they were in on Devontae Adams. They set a high bar for who they wanted to be in the same huddle as Drake May. So Chris Godwin fit that bill more than anyone else. They pursued him. It sounded the way Chris Godwin made it sound in his press conference, that they came really close, but he was too entrenched where he is. So I think the biggest problem is they set a very high bar for who they wanted to be in their organization, and they understand when you do that, it's going to be a very small pool. But you can swallow hard and say, screw it, we'll go get Stephon Diggs, and then run the risk of a guy who was with Minnesota and wanted out, and then was with Buffalo and got crossways with the quarterback, and say, well, we'll bring him in anyway. Maybe it'll be different here, or maybe we'll get something out of him, or maybe he is just a competitor. You know, I just think that they look at their team as being in a very nascent stage in terms of culture, and saying, we want everybody kind of paddling in the same direction all the time. So I would think that that's a big, big part of it.
Tommy Curran joining us here on WEEI Afternoons. Tom, when I was listening, there was one answer that stuck out to me. I think Sophie asked the question about the wide receiver plan, and Vrabel said something like, we're going to continue to look at that position. We're going to explore everything with other teams potentially. It seemed more specific than generalized, we'll look to get better any way we can. Do you have hope that might have been alluding to trade talks for a wide receiver that could produce some fruit at some point in the near future?
I definitely think that they're going to explore trades. Absolutely. I think that, they're remaining a team that was, as reported by, I believe it was Matthew Berry at ESPN, they've already made inquiries about A.J. Brown, rebuffed, probably will continue to be rebuffed. But Jacoby Myers, who we've talked about a number of times, would be a candidate entering the last year of his contract. So they have to explore things. And if you're not going to get that top-tier receiver, then I still think that you're going to have a better offense this year than you did last year. It's still not going to be where you want it, and they're still going to have to continue to beat the bushes to get that kind of boundary wide receiver. And maybe June comes and you say, all right, you know what? DeAndre? No, he's with Baltimore.
Yep.
I continue to pine for him. Even
that was a good signing for them,
man.
Can
we pray for DeAndre? Oh. He just got to Baltimore. We'll give you this for him. But I think that, you have to look for a boundary wide receiver that is better than what you have.
Hey, Tom, a big question for me, and if I remember correctly, it was for you before the combine, just after Vrabel was hired, was kind of the power structure. Who's got the power? Who's really in charge? And we've had two big kind of events since the time Vrabel's been hired, and that being the combine and then the start of free agency. Is there any question in your mind what the power structure is behind the scenes, or is that been made more clearly to you now that we're at this point in the offseason?
No, I think it's becoming more clear that it is a willing collaboration with Eliot Wolf, I think. And whether that credit goes to Vrabel, whether that goes to Wolf, whether that goes to Robert Kraft, but I think that they are making sure at every opportunity that people understand he carries the GM title. He does have final say. We're going to put him in a position where he shows that that's his role, which today I ascribed that, expressing that he had comfort with it, and Wolf explaining that he's there basically to serve Mike and what he wants in players. So it seems like everything is moving smoothly. Mike's preferences are probably going to be, in my estimation, just reading, Mike's preferences will get first airing. And then if you're going to talk him off at Eliot Wolf, who's the general manager, you're going to have some good, solid logic for moving him off a player. Like, who decided the culture was that important with this team this year? Who made that decision? I would imagine it was very much a Vrabel-inspired decision. So if that's been the marching order throughout free agency, that's a coach-type decision, isn't it, generally?
No doubt.
I mean, they're going to work hand in hand, but Mike wants a particular kind of locker room, and the personnel folks aren't in the locker room as much. So I would say that this shows who they've gotten and the reasoning that they've used time and again in terms of culture is Mike's vision for what he wants is being followed right now.
And the surreality of this, Tom, is that while we're currently interviewing you here on WEEI Afternoons, I'm staring at your face on an old NFL Films Top 10 show. That was actually, you were literally talking on the radio, and I was watching you on television as well.
He's everywhere, man.
It's a lot of Tom.
There's a lot of Tommy.
Meta.
A lot of Tommy.
Meta stuff.
Yeah, those were good shows. Those were good times. Last quick question for me, Tom. So talking about deciding that culture and that kind of locker room they want, dovetailing off of your question with Andy there about boundary receivers and improving the offensive talent. A guy like Mac Hollins, to me, I completely understand why they signed him, but all it was met with regionally here was, great, wide receiver 4. What's this guy going to do? Oh, awesome. He's going to distract us with all the costumes and nonsense. Meanwhile, every other fan base where he's ever left has bemoaned his departure because they've loved him so much. So where do you fall on that one?
He had 57 catches for Josh McDaniels a couple of years ago. The best that Kendrick Bourne did, and I like Kendrick Bourne, was 55 in 2021. So if it's a Kendrick Bourne level wide receiver, which was embraceable at a point for Patriots fans and people covering the team because there were other guys better than him, or presumed to be at least in terms of Myers, or presumed to be in the case of when they brought in Juju or Devontae Parker, you at least saw that they were staffing the position. I mean, Devontae Parker was supposed to be a player who could produce for them. He wasn't. So I look at Mac Hollins for the role that he's going to be in as a good ad. Is Kendrick Bourne long for this team? We'll see. I would imagine so. He's a pretty good soldier. But it's Kayshon Boutte, Demario Douglas, Kendrick Bourne, Mac Hollins, Javon Baker, and Jalen Polk. And right now, that's not filling the roles that you need to do. And Mac Hollins can have a role. Boutte can have a role. Douglas can have a role. I've seen them all catch balls. Bourne can catch balls. But they got to get better. They can't have a bunch of guys who you can count on for 40 catches. They need a guy who can be counted on for 65 or more and 1,000 yards.
Tom, before we let you go, straight from the text line, ask him about Cup, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. So, what about Cup?
He's out there, and he has made it sound, at least, I think, in reporting, that he's Patriot curious.
Ooh.
So he's willing to listen.
And we're Cup curious as well, so that's perfect. Let's get married.
Good Cup check.
So he'll answer the phone when we call. That's at least he'll do that.
Show him the money. All right, Tom, comment.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, just get him. Go get him. You got the money. All right, Tom, thanks for joining us. Thanks for being our eyes and ears, boots on the ground today down there in Foxborough. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, bud.
Happy to do it. Take care, guys.
See you, Tommy.
That was Tommy Curran from NBC Sports Boston.